Welcome back, YouTubers, to Everyday Life of an Aspie. If you landed on my page today, I welcome you all. I'm Aspie. I'm all about creating mental health and awareness and sharing my life stories with Aspieanswers syndrome, along with tips and advice through your general health and your mental health, as well as advocating and educating you all while taking you all on a journey with my life experiences with Aspieanswers syndrome, along with fun and games. So if you're into any of these, feel free to subscribe on the bottom right hand corner, and if you do so, turn on the notification bell for future videos like this. Was all about the introduction to medication and drugs, which will be broken down into the series of different types of drugs that are there, as well as the classification of the drugs that are used, and so on and so forth. So if you're into any of this, so as we are aware, there are many types of drugs and they are classified into different categories. So I'm here today, as I said, to educate you all based on these information that I have reached out and researched, to give you all a brief lowdown of what it is, and as said, share in more depth in the next few series over. But in the meantime, also just as a heads up, that we know for a fact that many people will tend to get to the point of using and abusing drugs, and it has been known for substance abuse and drugs. You may be wondering, what's the definition of medication or medicine and how does it work with our bodies? Just as an overview, a medication or medicine is a drug taken to cure or ameliorate any of the everyday symptoms that we have of an illness or any type medical condition. The use may also be as a preventive measure or medicine that has future benefits but does not treat any of the existing or pre-existing diseases or symptoms that occurs. Dispensing of medication is often regulated by governments into three categories: over-the-counter medications, which are available in pharmacies and supermarkets without special restrictions; behind-the-counter medicines, which are dispensed by a pharmacist without needing a doctor's permission or prescription that is running out for you; and prescription-only medicines, which must be prescribed by a licensed medical professional, usually a physician. However, in the United Kingdom, behind-the-counter medications or medicines are usually called pharmacy medicines, which can only be sold in registered pharmacies, by or under the supervision of a pharmacist. Pharmaceutical drugs, however, are usually categorized into three drug classes, which they are obviously not known for A, B, and C, and in those drug classes, this is defined as a group of drugs that will share a similar chemical structure or have the same mechanism of action, the same related mode of action, or target the same illness or related illnesses. The definition of drugs. A drug is any substance that can be used when inhaled, injected, smoked, consumed, absorbed via a patch on the skin, or dissolved under the tongue, causing a temporary psychological change in the body. Pharmacology, however, a drug is a chemical substance of a known structure other than a nutrient of an essential dietary requirement or ingredient, which is used when administered to a living organism that will produce a biological effect. A pharmaceutical drug, however, is also called a medication or medicine, as I said, is a chemical substance used to treat, cure, or prevent any or diagnose a diagnosis to promote well-being. Traditionally, drugs were obtained through extraction from medicinal plants, but more recently has been also by organic synthesis with the chemical compounds and the actual medicines that are. Pharmaceutical drugs are often usually classified into drug class groups of related drugs that have similar effects, as I said, or chemical structures, as well as also in saying this, the same mechanism of action, which I'm meaning here is binding to the same biological target and a related mode of action that are used to treat this disease. Psychoactive drugs are chemical substances that affect the function of the central nervous system, altering perception, mood, or consciousness. They include alcohol, a depressant or stimulant, and some small quantities in the stimulants such as nicotine and caffeine. These three are the most commonly consumed psychoactive drugs that are including hallucinogens, opiates, and amphetamines. Some drugs can cause addiction, and all drugs have side effects, so be aware that whatever drugs you may be using, that there are consequences with side effects and whatnot of what I've shared with some of the drug types basically, and hopefully I'll list it above or below of the playlist for you if interested. Excessive use of stimulants, however, can promote stimulants psychosis. Many recreational drugs illicit in international treaties, such as the Single Convention of Narcotic Drugs, exist for the purpose of their use or prohibition. You also got the terms, obviously, of controlled drugs, and this is defined as a drug possession whose possession, manufacture, distribution, and sales are controlled by the law or court of law. Controlled drugs, however, has powerful effects on the body and mind. A prescription is needed to obtain these controlled drugs. Illegal drug use is the wrong use, possession, manufacture, or sale of controlled drugs, and use, possession, manufacture of sale for illegal drugs. So the ones that are most commonly used are depressants, and obviously what it does is it slows down the nerve and brain activity, which I'll clearly illustrate above me of an image to show you guys of what it is all about. And the ones that are known as depressants are your alcohol, solvents, and tempers. Hallucinogen is the next one on the list. What this does to the body, it alters what we see and hear. And the most common one here is known for LSD. Painkillers. Their function or use for this is to block any nerve impulses that creates pain and whatnot. They are known as your aspirin, paracetamol, tramadol, and whatnot. Performance enhancers, improves muscle development. They are your anabolic steroids. Stimulant increases your nerve and brain activity, which is your nicotine, caffeine, and ecstasy. Stimulants and depressants, however, may affect the synapses between the neurons in the nervous system, which basically, again, hopefully I'll find an illustration to show these different type forms of drugs, of the way of the system, how it works. Stimulants cause more neurotransmitter molecules to diffuse across the synapse. Depressants, however, stops the next neuron sending the nerve impulses. They bind to the receptor molecules to the next neuron that needs to respond to the neurotransmitter molecules. Depressants is obviously known as a drug that tends to suppress the central nervous system activity. Other depressants include barbiturates and benzodiazepines. These drugs are sharing commonly in the ability to serve as agonists of the gamma aminobutyric acid or GABA neurotransmitter system. Because GABA has a quietening effect on the brain, GABA agonists also have quite an effect for other types of drugs that are often prescribed to treat both anxiety and insomnia. At least 7 different types of drugs in which they all have different effects to the body, as mentioned, with some risk, and they are drug classifications. Here are your stimulants, which are known for your amphetamines, caffeine, nicotine, and cocaine. Depressants, which are your opiates and opioids, alcohol, barbiturates, tranquilizers, and benzodiazepines. Your antipsychotics, antidepressants, cannabis, and inhalants. You may be wondering, how are drugs classified, however? Drugs are classified chemically accordingly to how they affect the brain and the body, as mentioned so many times before. Common classifications include stimulants, depressants, hallucinogens, and opioids. So the chemical classification of drugs, however, and all that, I'll talk later. And also, in saying this, there's the legal classification of drugs. So basically what this entails is drugs can be categorized, obviously, in a number of ways in the world of medicine and pharmacology. A drug can be classified by its chemical activity or by the condition that it treats. Anticonvulsant medications, for example, are used to prevent seizures, while mucolytic drugs break down the mucus and relieves congestion. In regards to addiction treatment and rehabilitation, the drug classifications used most often are the following 5 classes that are regulated by the Controlled Substance Act, which are your narcotics, depressants, stimulants, hallucinogens, and anabolic steroids. All of these drugs, however, with the exception of anabolic steroids, are considered psychoactive, meaning that they affect one or more of the mental faculties, including feelings of moods, feelings, perception, memory, cognition, and behaviors. Additionally, the use of drugs can be associated with a host of physical, mental, health, and personal complications, including alcoholic liver cirrhosis, cannabis-induced psychosis, social problems like your stigma, occupational difficulties, financial problems, and even legal problems. According to the US Drug Enforcement Administration, or DEA, substances from any of these classes may lead to the development of chemical dependence in one or both of the following forms. Physical dependence to a drug suggests that the body has become habituated to the presence of a drug. Consequently, physical dependence is reflected in both the development of tolerance and the presence of withdrawal syndrome. Tolerance refers to the reduced effects compared to what was experienced with the previous amount of the substance. Withdrawal develops when excessive or prolonged use of a drug is sharply reduced or even stopped. The onset of withdrawal often prompts the dependent individual to resume the use of the drug that they're relying on, or one that is similar to what they were using, to avoid any withdrawals. For example, withdrawal symptoms can include shaking, sweating, nausea, vomiting, or seizures may occur once alcohol use is stopped after regular or excessive use. Psychological dependence is manifested in the form of a craving for a drug. A person with psychological dependence has an excessive, irresistible, uncontrollable desire to use the drug. Psychological dependence may not cause physical symptoms, however, but can lead to drug-seeking-like behavior. Of drugs. As we know, there are many different ways of administering drugs into our body system, regardless of what it may be. And there are various of routes, but it can be more than one. So, bolus is the administration of medication, drug, or other component that is given to raise its concentration in the blood and to an effective level. The administration can be given intravenously, intramuscular, intrathecal, or subcutaneous. In medicine, a bolus, from Latin word bolus, means ball. It's the administration of a discrete amount of medication, drug, or other compound within a specific time period, which is usually generally between 1 to 30 minutes, in order to raise its concentration in blood to an effective level. The administration can be given by injection, intravenously, intramuscularly, intrathetically, subcutaneously, or even by inhalation. Another one is inhaled, so it's breathed into the lungs as an aerosol or dry powder. This includes smoking a substance. Injection, such as a solution, suspension, or emulsion, either intramuscular, intravenous, intraperitoneal, intraosseous, insufflation, or snorted into the nose. Orally, as liquid or solid form that is then therefore absorbed in the intestines, which obviously is through the mouth. Rectally, as superficially, that is absorbed by the rectum or colon. Sublingually, diffusing into the blood through the tissues underneath your tongue. Topically, usually a cream or ointment. A drug administered in this manner may be given to act locally or systemically. Vaginally, as a pessary, primarily to treat vaginal infections. Well, this quickly ends a real short, brief overview of what drugs are and the types and everything. Smash the like if you liked it, comment below, feel free to share these videos around, feel free to also follow me on my social medias. I'll catch you again soon. Ciao.